Abandoned hotels lie scattered throughout New York's Catskill Mountains.
It was paradise.
In decades past, these once lavish resorts were visited by millions.
Every sitting president from Theodore Roosevelt all the way on up to Lyndon Johnson had a connection here.
Now they sit crumbling from decay, some a pile of smoldering ashes from a series of mysterious fires.
People would say to me, well, don't you get discouraged or saddened when you see the ruins of the old hotels?
From a playground of leisure,
this was the refuge for the middle class,
to one of mischief and vandalism. What secrets do these abandoned hotels hold? Over the summer, I explored the ruins of more than half a dozen hotels in the region of the Catskill Mountains known as the Borscht Belt. I made a short documentary about this, which can be found on my YouTube channel, but I wanted to share some of the stories that didn't make it into that first video, and some of my own thoughts on the topic. The Borscht Belt began as modest guest houses on farms catering to Jewish clientele in the early 20th century. By the 1950s, the region exploded with growth, and the hotels expanded.
The entire reason why this region grew was that it provided middle class, working class, mostly Jewish Americans, with an opportunity to be kings and queens for 8 weeks.
Many of the guests at the hotels came from New York City as a way to escape the summer heat. They would travel to the Catskills for the cool mountain air, swimming pools, tennis, and various other activities.
Imagine a family from a hot apartment in Flatbush, Brooklyn, in Belmont, in the Bronx. This family gets out of the city, whether they go to a bungalow or go to a hotel, for 8 weeks of paradise.
At its mid-20th century peak, the Borscht Belt was the pinnacle of leisure, attracting people from all walks of life. Basketball legend Wilt Chamberlain worked at Kutcher's as a bellhop, and he is just one of the many celebrity connections to these hotels.
So much happened here. Every sitting president from Theodore Roosevelt all the way on up to Lyndon Johnson had a connection here. Eleanor Roosevelt and Jenny Grossinger were social friends. Henry Kissinger, Golda Meir, Martin Luther King.
These hotels were also renowned for their entertainment, particularly comedy.
You know, we talk about the Borscht Belt being the birthplace of American comedy. Arguably, or not so, yes, it was, but it was a lot more than that. Opera stars like Robert Merrill, Richard Tucker, Jan Pierce. You had a harness racetrack that on a Saturday night would get 10,000 people, that had rock and roll shows. It was the place to be.
Eventually, by the mid-1960s, attendance at these hotels started to decline.
If you go from the first generation, the Jewish farmers, the second generation, about 75 to 80% of the second generation wanted it. By the time you got to the third generation, it was down to 15 or 20%. And the industry just couldn't sustain itself. And then one by one, of all sizes, curiously enough, the middle to larger ones went first, because they had something that was another new thing, and that was called a mortgage for your indoor pool, for your new air-conditioned lobby, for your new deluxe California-style rooms with private bathrooms that were tiled. Their entire way of doing business, their entire system of living, just imploded.
Many people point to air travel, air conditioning, and assimilation of Jews into the broader culture as the reasons for the Borscht Belt's decline. But I think a broader economic shift in society must have also had an impact. How is it that people could afford to be up here for 8 weeks? By today's standards, that's like, wow, who gets...
Let me tell you the story of Max, the porter at Coney Island Hospital. In order to afford it, he would work overtime. He would calculate. He would say, all right, it's between September and June. I have to work X number of hours of overtime, and I have to put that money away no matter what, because if I start to spend that money, I'm not going to be able to spend my summer. So people would budget their economies on that.
According to Peter, the wives and children would stay in the Catskills all summer, while the men would travel back and forth to the city.
The ones who were self-employed had a little more flexibility. Those who worked for other people, they would either take their week or 2 week vacation, or what they would do is they would take long weekends throughout.
This still sounds unattainable in today's world. For decades, most middle-class families have had 2 working parents. That must have had some impact on the visits to these hotels. In the years since the hotels closed, several of them caught fire, destroying large portions of them. These fires led to the resurgence of the slur Jewish lightning, the accusation being that the hotel owners set the fires themselves for the insurance money. News reports indicate that the police had seen evidence of campfires at some of these hotels over the years. Others had been condemned for fire safety and building code violations. But these more recent fires are not the first to rage through these hotels.
So much of what we see now in all aspects of our lives can be connected to what happened up here. Even some of the laws that were passed. Unfortunately, it took some terrible accidents and terrible fires before very strict enforcement of fire codes took place. One in particular in 1964, the Morningside Hotel caught fire. The cause of the fire was due, they concluded, to the installation of an elevator shaft. So the elevator shaft created a draft, and it lifted the hot tar that was used to seal it, and the place caught fire. From that event, fire codes started to become safer all around. People started to say, hey, that makes sense. That creates a wind tunnel. So we have to be careful.
Many of these hotels were built before the fire Peter mentioned. Maybe they were never brought up to modern safety regulations. Certainly the abandoned ones wouldn't have been. I will say it was strange to see a gas can on the second floor of one of the hotels. But it's not hard to imagine that these buildings with floors that sagged under my weight and had holes through them might also have faulty wiring that causes a fire one day. Now that the Borscht Belt's glory days are in the past, instead of being visited by vacationing families, these hotels are most often visited by urban explorers and a handful of others. On one of my trips to the Nevele, I ran into a skateboarder making use of the indoor pool. Graffiti artists are obviously taking advantage of the seclusion to put up murals, and of course, just general vandalism. Wandering through the decay and collapsing structures, there are still signs of life. Here, someone obviously had a field day throwing old TVs out the windows of the hotel rooms. I'm sure many look at this destruction and the crumbling structures in a negative way, but Peter has a different perspective.
And people would say to me, well, don't you get don't you get discouraged or saddened when you drive around and you see the ruins of the old hotels? And the answer is no. I look at the ruins and I close my eyes and I say to myself, I remember that. I remember that fence at the Raleigh Hotel, climbing that fence on a Saturday night to see a name act. I remember that. I remember when the owner of the Raleigh, Manny Halbert, said, I'm gonna fix these guys. And he put grease on the fence. So you would climb up the fence and say, I got away with it, except for you'd say, holy crap, I'm covered with grease. So I always look at it from a positive standpoint.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, check out some of my other videos which cover a wide variety of subjects. If you want to keep up with what I'm working on, head over to my website and sign up for my newsletter.